What are the biggest storylines going into training camp for the offense for the Minnesota Vikings? That's what we're going to talk about here today. We're going to talk about the quarterbacks, the running backs, wide receivers, tight ends, and offensive line, and what we should be looking for going into a very pivotal season for the Minnesota Vikings. Welcome to the Real Forno Show.
Welcome to the Real Forno Show, hosted by Tyler Forness, publisher at The Sporting News, contributor on SKOL North's Purple Daily, publisher of Substack Run In Shooter, the host of The Good, The Bad, and The Hungry on the Voices of Wrestling Podcast Network, and a founding member of Vikings First and SKOL.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Real Forno Show. I'm your host, Tyler Forness. With me, as always, in the top right corner, as I mess with and fidget with a screwdriver, is producer Dave. Dave, training camp is coming. Sunday, rookies report, and Tuesday, the veterans report. And apparently, they're going to be on the practice field for that conditioning test on Wednesday, ready to rock and roll. Things are coming fast and heavy. So our next two shows are going to be spent previewing the Minnesota Vikings in training camp. Tonight is the offense. And we're just going to get right to it because we're going to keep this nice, tight, and right for everybody. And one of the tough parts about previewing training camp, we've kind of been doing that for the last 3 months. So this is going to be a lot of wrap up. It's going to be a lot of the stuff we've already talked about, but it's going to be a little bit updated. So start with the quarterbacks. Sam Darnold is the presumed starter, and there shouldn't be a surprise to anybody. Darnold was brought in here to be the starter. And what's interesting about where the NFL is trending right now is, are we going to see a renaissance of mid-range quarterbacks? You know, quarterbacks like Sam Darnold, like Geno Smith, like Baker Mayfield, who are making between like 40 to 60% of what the top of the market at quarterback is making, and they're giving you good results. Now, you're going to have to put a great team surrounding them in order to... Oh, I think Odie is eating something. Hold on.
Yeah, they're going to need a great team surrounding them. Otherwise, they're going to fail.
Mm-hmm.
But I think those mid-range quarterbacks have been there for a while. It's just, each team looks for the guy that isn't the mid-range after the fact.
But it's our mid-range quarterbacks going to become the future of franchises. And the reason why I talk about this is because you have the success of Geno Smith. Then you had the success last year, Baker Mayfield. Now, he's got to prove it longer than just the 1 year. Hold on. Odie's chewing something, and I'm worried about it.
Okay. Yes, they've got to prove it more than 1 year. I would call Kirk Cousins into that category, but that's me. Ha, 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 ha. Anyways, yes, Julian, 50 days until kickoff for every team in the NFC North, including our very own Minnesota Vikings, and we can't wait.
Yeah. They're going to have to prove it more. And like you said, and I said, but if they continue to have success, could that become a trend? Could a team who... let's just use Jordan Love, because there's a lot of controversy on whether Jordan Love is actually really good or if he still needs to prove more. Would you rather...
He still needs to, quote, prove more.
I think he just needs to be a little bit more consistent, because he had a great finish to the year, but he wasn't great to start. And
I want that Jordan Love back.
I know. It's trending upward for Love in the Packers, but it's not a guarantee. So do you want to pay him $50 million? Or would you rather pay Geno Smith 25 to 30? Because that Geno Smith's making average annual value right now of $25 million. Baker Mayfield, $33.3 million. Kirk Cousins is less than total market value as far as like top of the market, but he's getting 45. Like 45 is not a mid-range guy. Baker Mayfield, Geno Smith are mid-range guys. And Sam Darnold could become the next mid-range quarterback where he gets that 2 or 3 year deal worth about 75, 80 million. And then he becomes the starter. Case Keenum got a mid-range quarterback a few years ago at $18 million. It didn't work for Case. But I think we're in an interesting position now where if you don't have that elite guy, maybe you take the shot with the mid-range guy and then build a team around. Because I'll tell you, having Geno Smith instead of Trevor Lawrence, you now have the ability to have DK Metcalf. That pays DK Metcalf's salary. So you get DK Metcalf and Geno Smith for $6 million less than you are paying Trevor Lawrence. Now, that's not to say that Geno is a better quarterback than Trevor Lawrence. I think Trevor Lawrence is underrated as a whole because he is so good. But that Steve Palazzolo of PFF actually posted a highlight reel of receivers letting down Trevor Lawrence on just great throws. And Lawrence has the most lost EPA of any quarterback this past year because of drops. And I think those things matter when we're having that conversation. But the whole point of the mid-range quarterback is, are you going to want to pay a guy that you're not 100% sure is elite quarterback money, or a mid-range guy, and then you can have an elite receiver? Geno Smith to Justin Jefferson is $5 million more than Trevor Lawrence. That that kind of perspective is going to be talked about in quarterback rooms, especially if Geno keeps performing well, which he's been doing. And now you have Baker Mayfield, who's on a mid-range deal because his deal is about $22 million less than what Trevor Lawrence is getting. That's Mike Evans. Thank you, Gary. Oh, Dave, did you upload the picture that I sent you? Because Gary, I was thinking about you earlier tonight because when I made dinner for the wife and I made crab legs. And I just make crab legs. What we did was I put, it was about 6 pounds of snow crab in a disposable container, and then 2 sticks of butter and a crap ton of seasoning, and you get that beauty. Oh, it's very, 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 very good. But no, just had to shout Gary, because one, thank you for the super chat, and two, you're the one who really appreciates the food discussion, and I do as well.
Yes, and I let Gary know, and while we were talking, we came up with a pizza recipe.
Okay. What is it?
Slightly smoked deer loin, shaved, cooked in butter, then laid on a medium crust base with hollandaise, with shaved radishes, shallots, shaved truffles, topped with 5 sunny side eggs.
That sounds like you want to mix a fancy brunch in downtown with something you'd find in a shack in Bemidji.
Hey,
that's interesting.
I can tell you, having deer tenderloin for breakfast is God's gift. It is absolutely fantastic. Mm-hmm. And I used to fix it for breakfast with eggs, but now you combine all those extra ingredients and put it on a nice crust, that flavored type crust. Oh God, that would be just heavenly.
Mm-hmm.
Hey,
it's very interesting.
Gary's a pizza savant. I'm convinced.
No, I remember the cornbread crust one he sent on Monday with the Creole sauce and crawfish. Oh, buddy, that sounded awesome. But anyways, enough about pizza. Let's talk more about the quarterback. So if Darnold has that renaissance year, we even talked about it on the show. It's one of our best videos that we've ever done. Almost 14,000 views talking about what if Sam Darnold is really good. SKOL Mafia, thank you. Yes, Gary is the master chef, and I'm trying to beat him. Let's just be honest here. I'm trying to surpass Gary. He does a great job, and that's why we talk about food so much on the show, because it's always fun to kind of swap recipes.
Hey, I want to stop the show right here. See,
okay.
Mary saying SKOL? Do you know what today is for Mary?
Is it her 29th birthday?
It's her 29th birthday, and we all here at Vikings First and SKOL want to wish her the best of birthdays, and that this next orbit around the sun is her best one yet.
Hey, you know what? That 29th birthday is special. Happy birthday, Mary. And a special shout out as well to my sister-in-law, Eliza. It is actually her 29th birthday. Happy birthday to her. I'm sure she will never watch this, but I wanted to shout her out anyways. Yeah, so quarterback, if Darnold's really good, the Vikings may re-sign him. And if and when that happens, we will talk about it a lot because it's a very interesting topic. And if you want to go watch it, Dave will link it either in the show notes or throw it in the chat because it's an interesting discussion and he relates directly to Drew Brees. And it's not the way you think because everybody remembers the Saints Drew Brees. We're not talking about Saints Drew Brees here. All right. And then you have JJ McCarthy. McCarthy will start when he's ready. There are only
September.
Then he starts in September. I will say this. The one complication that they could have if JJ McCarthy shows that he's ready, Dave, Sam Darnold is balling out. You don't replace a guy who's playing incredibly well. And that's where this patience element can really come in. If Darnold is playing really well, you can have McCarthy just sit and watch and be like, hey, this is how you handle success. This is how you handle this, that, and the other thing, and how you continue to evolve as a play caller at the line of scrimmage, as a quarterback, as somebody who sees the field and does all these different things. And that's going to be very interesting to kind of parse out and watch over the course of the next few weeks. Very interested in how it all shapes up. And the other two quarterbacks aren't nearly as interesting. It's Jaren Hall versus Nick Mullins for that other quarterback spot. If McCarthy becomes the backup, and I think that's the key, if he earns the backup spot, then I think Nick Mullins gets traded. I've been very steadfast in that belief. You can get value for Nick Mullins. I don't think you can get value for Jaren Hall, but you give him one more year of development. Guess what you have in 25 and 26? A backup quarterback on a 5th round rookie contract, which is about $1 million a year. That is a valuable piece to the salary cap puzzle. And not paying a guy like a Sam Darnold $10 million next year would be great to have. And if Hall shows more of what we saw against the Falcons and less of what we saw against the Packers, along with McCarthy taking that next step, I really think that Jaren Hall is going to be here. Nick Mullins will be gone because there's going to be a team that wants a top 5 true backup quarterback. So that's what Mullins is. He's a true backup. He does not have starter potential. He can spot start you a few games. And
I agree. And I think if JJ gets that number 2 spot, I think it's well worth trading away Mullins at the last minute if possible and gathering a pick, 6th round pick or whatever for next year in the draft. That will help because we are a little bit short.
Just a little bit. All right. Quarterback is pretty simple. Let's move on to running back, which is also a relatively simple position. RB1, Aaron Jones. RB2, Ty Chandler. Fullback 1, CJ Ham. There's likely one more. There's one more. Hold on. Before we do that, Delton's got an interesting comment. It's pathetic to think that the 10th overall pick isn't going to see the field and is getting started over by a Darnold type. Here's the thing with that, Delton. I don't necessarily disagree with you that, hey, you'd like to see him start right away, but he's a quarterback. It's okay if he doesn't. And I think that's more of a frustration and how I would relate that opinion than because I don't think I'd use the word pathetic. It's you'd like to just see him play right away. And I think that's where the fan of us comes in. If he sits and he's really good, nobody's going to care. Patrick Mahomes sat for a year. I don't think anybody cares.
And he was picked at the same spot, 10th.
Yeah, he was. I should write about that. I should write about how JJ McCarthy relates to Patrick Mahomes. Oh, it's just that they were drafted in the same spot and they're going to sit. Yeah, but it's play McCarthy when he's ready. I'll leave my opinion at that. But the sentiment, Delton, where you're just frustrated about it, completely understand, respect it. Running back, as RMR33 says, Cam Akers is a wild card. I would completely agree. He is a wild card because of the Achilles injuries. We don't know. We don't know what those Achilles injuries are going to look like. We don't know a lot of different things.
Hopefully
And
we hear next week when the vets report that he has indeed passed his physical.
yeah, and that's Dave, that's incredibly interesting. They haven't announced that he's been officially signed. Now, ESPN's Transaction Wire has him signed pending physical. Others, no. And it's very, very annoying to kind of just have it up in the air.
It could be that he said, we'll do the physical when we get to camp. He may have had other plans.
He's in town.
Is he?
Yeah.
I don't know. I find it interesting. But we'll hopefully find out sooner than later.
I agree.
But yes, I agree. It's a wild card.
I think we're going to find out sooner rather than later. But that running back 3 is a wild card spot. And I don't think Kenny Wong was going to end up getting that spot. Reason being, well, I don't think he's a good running back. I think he's only a good returner, and I think it's going to be more about more about playing running back with the return game than it is going to be just returning kicks like a traditional sense because of the changes to the kickoff rule. Gary, thank you again. We appreciate that. And this channel is not going anywhere. We're gonna be here for a long time. The interesting thing here is what happens with that running back 3 spot, because Cam Akers, we already talked about being a wild card. Myles Gaskin is a versatile piece. And then you have Dwayne McBride, who had a lot of fanfare as a 7th round pick. I really think he's a good runner, like between the tackles. He's kind of runs like a truck and he's not slow. He's not a burner, but he's very good. And he just hasn't shown it. He did not get an opportunity to be a pass catcher this past season. He didn't get a chance to do that at all in college. He was on the practice squad, and I think practice squad's a good place for him to slowly develop him. He was only 21 years old coming out. Maybe he's going to take a step forward this year. I would expect Myles Gaskin to win that running back 3 job because he's such a versatile piece. He's a quality hand on third down, pass protector, and good on special teams. And I'm not convinced Cam Akers will be good enough with that second Achilles injury. I'm not giving him the benefit of the doubt. He's got to prove it to me. And is that fair? I don't know if it's necessarily fair or not, but it's reality. You have 2 Achilles injuries. You have to prove to me your athleticism is still there and you're good enough. It's not a want. It's can your body handle it? And we'll find out. But running back's going to be interesting to watch. Wide receiver, Dave. This is where things get really interesting. Start with the Jordan Addison piece. Punishment will not come from the National Football League until the case is resolved legally. Now, if it was a situation like Adrian Peterson, they could put him on the commissioner's exempt list, but a suspicion of DUI arrest is not one of those. Yes, Brian, PBR does rock. That's why I'm wearing the t-shirt. And
if they want to sponsor us, we'd welcome it.
Yeah. I like PBR. It's a very good beer. If I'm not drinking an actual light beer, PBR is going to be the go-to. So you have that. You have Addison, but the NFL's not going to suspend him until it's a closed case, meaning the law is like, yep, we're good. The punishment's already been doled out. It's over. Case closed. Then the NFL will send it to that third-party arbitrator, and then a ruling will come out. If he's convicted of a DUI, probably a 3-game suspension. But the Vikings could supersede that, and they could jump the gun. They could jump the line and say, you know what, Addison? You were a dumbass last year, and then you were a dumbass this year. Well, being a dumbass has its penalties, and we're going to fine you a bunch of money and suspend you for a game. They could do that. I have no idea if they will, but alcohol is becoming a theme with the Minnesota Vikings. both their fault and not. So we're going to have to kind of think that it could happen.
And we got to remember, this may not be alcohol related. It just means under the influence of something.
Yes, that is 100% true. That's what we talked about on Monday's show. I recommend you go check that out. We talked about it in depth for about a half an hour. But the thing with Addison is, even if it wasn't alcohol, it's still 2 moving violations within the course of a year. Dave, that's bad. It's very bad. And they're going to have to figure it out. But outside of that, the talent on the field, he's wide receiver 2 to Justin Jefferson's wide receiver 1. And you have a battle wide receiver 3, which I think will be won by Brandon Powell. Jalen Naylor is going to get all the chances to win it, but he can't stay on the field to save his life. Trent Sherfield's a good hand, but I don't think he's a wide receiver 3 caliber guy. Tristan Jackson and Thayer Thomas are players to watch for those top wide receiver 3 and 4 spots. Jackson has been around for a while. He finally got on the field last year and got to play some real snaps. Thayer Thomas got the praise of Kevin O'Connell all throughout the offseason. He looks like he's bigger than last year, thicker. And I think that he's probably just a slot only, but that's not necessarily a bad thing with how they run these condensed sets. And because he's gotten thicker, I think that could end up working. So Dr. Proto, somebody, I don't remember who it was, but somebody actually did the research on California law and found that if you have somebody available to pick you up, they have this this statute in California where you can get released right away after all the testing is done if somebody's available to come get you to try and prevent overcrowding in the jail, and they have all the information they need. They technically don't need you to be able to continue to pursue a case. So I think it's different from that kind of old school thinking and mentality that I think is where you're going, which I completely understand. Theoretically, if it's a Friday night and you're drunk, you're going to be in the tank until Monday because you're not supposed to get out. But I think because Los Angeles is so big, they have things like this to kind of ease the burden on the public jail.
It's called a cite and release.
Yes.
He gets cited and released with the promise that he comes back for his hearing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think that's something to be mindful of. We're going to know more when we get more information from them. And right now we just don't have it. But wide receiver 3, Dave, I'm going to stake my claim. I think it's going to be Brandon Powell, but I think Tristan Jackson's your wide receiver 4. I think it's finally his time to make that big leap. He's been in the system for a while, and I just don't trust Jalen Naylor. I think Naylor will get cut. I do. Because I just don't see him being able to stay healthy. That's
so
a problem.
Don't see the Vikings trading for Brandon Ayuk?
Nah, it'd be fun. It'd be cool, but no.
Nah,
they could make it work if they really wanted to. But you have Jordan Addison under team control, and Addison has a chance to be as good or better than Ayuk. That's far from a guarantee. But Addison's on a trajectory that's very, very good. Why would you want to get rid of that?
And for the super expensive contract for a wide receiver that hopes to be a wide receiver 1, nah.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen. I know people talk about it and have talked about it, but no. Don't get your hopes up, fans. It's not going to happen.
It's not like the Vikings have a ton of assets to trade to be like, well, one, if they're trading for Ayuk, you probably want to keep Jordan Addison as your wide receiver 3. And then you're giving up at least a first rounder next year, probably a first and a third. You're getting Ayuk, then you're going to pay him $30 million. Yeah.
No.
I don't think I could do it. But it'd be fun. That's a move you make in 2 years on a 1-year kind of rental deal. If you think that receiver puts you over the top, completely on board with that. But I don't see Ayuk as being a part of the long-term plan, so I'd be out. Tight end, Dave. Tight end's the real interesting position. I think it was Doogie that kind of mentioned this idea in the first place, that they don't place TJ Hawkinson on the physical and able to perform list, but they keep him on the active roster and let him, that would allow him to attend practices with the team and practice in his own way. But on the PUP list, you can't even do that. You aren't really allowed to participate in much of anything except in like house meetings. So that's a real thing. Now, when you look at other elements of, my goodness, Odie is sleeping next to me. He's making me tired. When you have other elements at play, the Vikings do still have an open roster spot. Well, they will. With Kyrie Jackson having passed away, he's going to be moved to, I don't know, like the reserve retired list, I think is probably where he'll end up going because, by passing away, I think that technically means you are a retired player, like as far as an NFL classification for roster construction. So he'll be moved off of the active roster, and then they'll have one spot open, which will probably go to Cam Akers. But that also allows you to keep Hawkinson on the active roster. You also have 7 tight ends with Hawkinson, one of them being Sammy's Reyes. Sorry, I think you have 8 tight ends with Reyes. And Reyes is that international pathway player, so he's not going to count towards your active roster anyway. And this is going to be an interesting battle. Munt was the front runner going into OTAs to be that starter opposite Josh Oliver. Oliver's going to have the same role. He may get a few more snaps here and there as like on like 11 personnel where there's only one tight end on the field, but he's going to be the blocker. He's going to be that extra tackle on the outside, and they'll use him in the passing game, but it won't be as like a featured option. But Johnny Munt, he did it last year. He played relatively well. He's been with Kevin O'Connell for a while, so it makes sense. But Robert Tonyan came in on a vet minimum deal, and he looked really good during the offseason, and you could argue that he's got more upside as far as like a single season than you have with Johnny Munt. I don't know what's going to happen there, but I do think it's between those two guys to be the starter for while Hawkinson is out. I think it'll probably go to Tonyan, but Kevin O'Connell did call Munt the best tight end 3 in the league. Does that mean he was going to want to keep him there or want to give him more opportunity? That's hard to say. One guy to keep an eye on to make a splash, UDFA Trey Knox. If you look at his relative athletic score, didn't test super well. He's kind of a late transition to tight end. I mean, he's big. He's 6'5", 240. And he was that as a receiver. And then they moved him to tight end at Arkansas. And then he went to South Carolina for a year. And he was good. And his testing wasn't phenomenal, but his GPS data was. We talked about that with Pro Football Focus's Max Chadwick a few weeks ago. I recommend you check that out if you haven't. We talked about a lot of UDFAs and the general scouting process of Quasito Flumensa. So that's a good episode. I think he could make some waves. RMer asked about N'Keal Harry. Yeah, he's basically a tight end now. And I think he's going to be on the practice squad again because I think he's a valuable player to have. You can play him at receiver. You can play him in line. He's a good blocker. I think all those things matter. But I don't think he's going to be good enough, Dave, to be on the active roster. I just don't.
We may be surprised. That's what the preseason's for. Is we get to watch these guys battle it out. But there is a competition at tight end. That's going to be one of the fun ones to watch.
Oh yeah, I'm really excited for the competition at tight end. Nick Muse is somebody to not forget about either. Yeah, he's been on the roster with the Vikings for 2 years. Spent most of his first year on the practice squad. Was on the active roster all of last year. So that's going to be something to keep in mind. Let's go to offensive tackle. Offensive tackle is going to be very simple. You have Christian Darrisaw left tackle, Brian O'Neill right tackle, David Questenberry is your swing guy, Walter Rouse is your fourth. I don't think that changes. I don't think he's going to be superseded either by Doug Nestor or Spencer Rowland. I think Nestor could end up on the practice squad because I think there's some real inside versatility. There is some interesting developments there, but I think it's the how things are structured is pretty simple. Center, it's going to be Garrett Bradbury, Dan Feeney, and Michael Juergens can play center. He played center most of his career at Wake Forest, spent last season, his final year at guard. So having that flexibility to play both is going to be key, but I'd peg him as the third center. Guard is going to be the interesting one. Both guard positions are technically up for grabs. Blake Brandel is going to start training camp, top of the depth chart at left guard. Ed Ingram, top of the depth chart at right guard. And you're going to have Dalton Risner, Dan Feeney, Michael Juergens trying to win those spots. I wouldn't say that it's set in stone, but I feel like it's close. I don't think Risner is going to win the job at either spot. I actually think he could be a trade or cut candidate because I don't think he's good enough. And I think the Vikings just might be like, we like our depth and we'll save the $1.3 million by cutting you. And if it's a trade, it'll be, I think, $1.9 million saved. Because I think his signing bonus is $500 and his guaranteed salary was $600. Yes, Gary. Odie got sleepy first, but I've had a busy day. I even went to the gym. No sleepy farts, though, Gary. No sleepy farts. I'm very intrigued to kind of see how guard is going to shape up after the top. Are Juergens and Feeney going to be the top two guys? Will somebody like Doug Nestor, who I mentioned at tackle, be good on the inside? Jeremy Flax is a humongous individual at 345 pounds. Is he going to be fleet of foot enough to be able to do a lot of the things that the Minnesota Vikings want to do? Now, they did run wide zone at Kentucky. So that's something to be mindful of. Guard is going to be another interesting position battle because you're not asking somebody to beat Dakota Dozier. You're asking somebody to beat Dalton Risner, Blake Brandel, Ed Ingram. They're all capable football players. And I think having capable football players in this sense is a good thing. I think Brandel and Ingram end up keeping their jobs. I think Ingram's underrated by a lot of the people in Vikings media and the fan base. I don't think he's phenomenal, but I think he's way better than he's given credit for.
Question is, how many offensive linemen will be kept when they go to the final 53? 8, 9, 10? That's
9.
That's probably where your battles are going to come in to determine.
Mm-hmm. Well, it also might be 10.
Watch out for.
Here's the thing. We don't know how teams are going to view this kickoff. Are they going to want to have bigger bodies? Are they going to want to have speed guys? Mm-hmm. How are they going to view that? Are they going to want to have like 2 or 3 offensive linemen on the field ready to block for wide zone? That's a tough one.
It's a good question.
We don't know how this is going to be handled.
Looking forward to in the preseason.
Yeah, we don't know how it's going to be handled. And because we don't know, there's a lot of difficulty here. Yeah, we'll find out. We'll answer this this question from Gary, and then we're going to sign off for the night because I think that's a good primer for the offensive portion of the training camp preview. What do you think we get for trading Risner? Like, I'd probably say you're right on a 6th or like a 6th, 7th pick swap kind of thing. The big thing with Risner is if you're going to trade him, a team's going to have to want him, and they could have had him in May. So why would they want him now if they could have had him in May? What would have changed? That's the key. You'd have to have somebody's offensive guard get hurt and be out for the year, and you need somebody who can be a starter. Risner can be a starter. I don't think he's a great player, but I think he's good enough. And by having him, I think that's a benefit for them. But I think a desperate team will pay a 5th, if like, especially if a couple teams bidding. A 6th or a pick swap would probably be what happened. We'll find out. The Vikings could just decide to keep him anyways and have him be a backup. Like, that's still a possibility. So with that, Dave, that's the show. A lot of interesting things to watch for at Minnesota Vikings training camp this upcoming year. And I'm going to try and be out there. I'm still kind of figuring out my schedule on what makes the most sense. I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to handle my coverage. And once I do that, I will let you guys know. In the meantime, make sure you check out from earlier today, Who Will Be King here on this network. Dave hosted it this week. And then 2 bloggers will be on Sunday talking about training camp as the rookies report that afternoon. And we're going to have a lot more for you here upcoming, talking about everything Minnesota Vikings. Make sure 5-star reviews on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. It helps out a ton. Let's actually take a look here, Dave. I know we took a look on Monday. Have we gotten any 5-star reviews? Now, it'd be nice if my phone decided, hey, I'll open the window. I don't know. This touchscreen has been annoying me lately. No new ratings. Unfortunate.
Well, that happens.
Hey,
now,
you know what?
I'm going to dream of Gary's new pizza. So.
Hey, you know what? That pizza does sound good. I am going to go dream of Texas State winning a national championship in NCAA 25 as I am 9-0 against Southern Miss. With that, I'm Tyler. He's Dave. SKOL Vikings, everybody.
SKOL Vikings. And happy birthday, Mary.
Happy birthday.
Like, subscribe, and ring the bell to get notifications. It helps us grow this community that we all love our Minnesota Vikings. And on behalf of Tyler Forness and myself, Dave Stefano, thank you so dearly for watching The Real Forno Show. SKOL, everyone!